Alright, we're going to continue looking at linear equations. This time we're going to be looking at writing equations in both the slope-intercept and the standard form. However, this time we'll be given a point and a slope. So in our first example, we're given a point of 4, 2 and a slope of 3. So what we want to do is take this information and rewrite it so that we have the slope-intercept form. Now what we're going to start with is, instead of starting with the slope-intercept form, we're going to actually start off with our point-slope form. And that's the one that says y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And the reason I'm starting off with point-slope form is because we're given a point and a slope. So anytime we have a point and a slope, it would only make sense that we use the point-slope form. So what I'm going to do now is replace some of these variables with the numbers that we're given. So 4, 2 is the point. 4 is our x value, 2 is our y value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and replace that y of 1 with the y value, which is a 2. I'm going to replace that m, which stands for slope, with a 3, because that's what our slope is. And I'm going to replace that x of 1 with the 4, because that's what our x value is. It's a 4. So at this point, all I've done is replace the y1, the m, and the x1. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this equation and I'm going to convert it so that it's in that slope-intercept form, that y equals mx plus b. So the first thing I'm going to do is use some distributive property. I'm going to multiply 3 times x, which is 3x. And I'm also going to multiply 3 times a negative 4, which is a negative 12. I'm almost there. I want y by itself. I want it to say y equals, because that's what slope-intercept form is. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this 2 and I'm going to add it to the 12. So when I take a negative 12, add 2, I now get a negative 10. I now have my slope-intercept form. I now have y equals 3x minus 10. So this is our equation in slope-intercept form that has a slope of 3 and would also contain the point 4, 2. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take that equation and we're going to convert it into our standard form, which we saw in a previous video. So here we go. We're going to take that y equals 3x minus 10 and we're going to convert it to standard form. That's that ax plus by equals c. So we're going to start with moving that 3x to the left of the equation, and to do that we're going to subtract, making this a negative 3x plus y equals negative 10. Now keep in mind, when you're working with your standard form, you're not allowed to start with a negative value, negative a. So what we're going to do is we're going to fix that by taking the whole equation and we're going to multiply it by a negative 1. Because when we multiply by negative 1, a negative 1 times a negative 3x is now going to make this a positive 3x, which is what we want. We want a positive number in front of that x. But let's go ahead and continue multiplying everything by negative 1. So negative 1 times y would be a negative y. And a negative 1 times a negative 10 would make this a positive 10. I now have my standard form. Remember guys, standard form, you can't have fractions, and a has to be a positive value, which I have both of those in this case here. So I now have my standard form and my slope-intercept form given the slope and the point. Alright, let's take a look at another example. This time we have a slope of 1/2 and a point 6, negative 8. So once again, in order to get slope-intercept form, we're going to have to first start off with the point-slope form. And that is y minus y of 1 equals m times x minus x of 1. Alright, so let's go ahead and start by replacing some of these variables with the 3 numbers that we're given. We're going to start off by first replacing that y1 with the y value, which is a negative 8. Now notice there are 2 negatives, or a negative and minus sign here, and we'll take care of that here in a second. M, which stands for slope, is 1/2. And the x value is a 6. So at this point, all I've done is replace the 3 variables, the y1, the m, and the x1, with the 3 values, or 3 numbers that were given. Now to clean this up a little bit, these two negative signs that I have here, y minus a negative 8, I'm going to rewrite that as y plus 8. Because remember, two negatives make a positive. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is use some distributive property to get rid of these parentheses. 1/2 times x is a 1/2 x. 1/2 times a negative 6 would be a negative 3. Now I want the y by itself, so the next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and we're going to subtract 8 from both sides of the equation. Alright, so I'm going to subtract a negative 3 minus the 8. Negative 3 minus the 8 would be a negative 11. So I have the equation y equals 1/2 x minus 11. This is our slope-intercept form, given the slope of 1/2 and the 0.6 negative 8. Let's take this equation and convert it so that it's in our standard form. That's that ax plus by equals c. So let's go ahead and take that y equals 1/2 x minus 11. Let's start by moving that 1/2 x to the left of the equation, and we can do that by subtracting it, making it negative 1/2 x plus the y equals negative 11. Now notice here we have two problems. The first problem is that we have a fraction in the equation, and we also have a negative value in front of our x. So we're going to fix both of those problems in one step. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this whole equation and I'm going to multiply it by a negative 2. A negative, because when I multiply negative times another negative, I get a positive. And the reason I'm multiplying by 2 is so that I can get rid of that fraction 1/2. So look what happens when I multiply negative 2 times a negative 1/2. Negative 2 times a negative 1/2 now makes this a positive 1x. When I multiply negative 2 times the y, I get a negative 2y. And when I multiply negative 2 times a negative 11, I get a positive 22. So notice that I've taken care of both of our problems. I no longer have a fraction in the equation, and I no longer have a negative number in front of our x. So I now have my standard form of our linear equation that has a slope of 1/2, and that would also contain that 0.6 negative 8.